When I was younger, I was a little bit afraid of the doctrine of the Dormition because I thought that it was hard to defend. You notice that we read the Magnificat today, and that's because there is no account of the Dormition in the Bible itself. So where do we get this idea of the Dormition? Well, there's a lot of extra-biblical accounts of it, but none of them are considered to be super historically reliable texts. And that was kind of a problem for me to hear, is that, and it probably hurts to all of our modern ears too, is that we really want to know. Proof for us is when there is a written document that tells us that something is true. But there's a very specific reason that we think that way, and it's because we live in a culture where everyone can read and everyone can write. That's why we value written text so much. In the ancient world, many people, probably most people at this time, couldn't read and couldn't write. And so how did they pass along traditions reliably? They did it through oral tradition. And they took oral tradition very seriously. Storytelling was an art form, and it wasn't just to entertain people, it was to remember the stories of the culture's history and tradition. You see this all over the ancient world with some of the most important texts in the ancient Near East. Take, for example, the Iliad and the Odyssey, right, which are loosely based off of real historical events. People tell us it's very clear based on the way that they're written that these are stories that were told for a very, very long time before they were written down. And Homer was probably just the guy who told the stories the best. And there's a lot of books in the Bible that seem to have the same kind of creation, where they were just oral traditions that were passed down very carefully until they were finally put down in text. So what do we see with the Dormition? If there was just one flimsy historical text, that would be one thing. But what we see with the Dormition is that there are texts all over the ancient world, from church fathers and from just anonymous texts, that all have different narratives about the Dormition of Mary. So there's one in the Syriac world called the Six Books, and I published that one in the bulletin this week. There's another one that's just called, I was doing the research earlier and I kind of forgot the name of it. It's called like the Dormition of Our Lady or something like that. And then you've got Hippolytus. St. Hippolytus wrote about the Dormition of Mary, and a host of other church fathers from different sections of the world all seem to have believed that Mary went into heaven, body and soul, after being laid to rest, after dying. So what does that tell you? Right? The main source is not necessarily any one of these texts, but these texts tell us that there was an oral tradition, that Christians all over the world were talking about this and took it very seriously. And the fact that we have different accounts written in different sections of the world tell us that this was a universally accepted Christian doctrine. The other interesting thing is, one of the common ways that the Dormition is defended, that Mary ultimately goes to heaven, body and soul, is the argument from relics, or the lack of relics, rather. We don't have any first-class relics of Mary. We don't have a piece of her bone or anything like that. We have a lot of second-class relics of Mary. For example, we have the cloth that she used to pick up Jesus' blood when he was scourged at the pillar. That's a real, maybe you remember that scene from the Passion. There's a real cloth, I've touched it, and it is a real relic of both Jesus and Mary at the same time, which is pretty amazing. But we don't have any first-class relics of Mary. We don't have her body. There's a tomb in the Middle East, but there's no body in it. So what happened to her relics? And as Maronites, we should know, we should be the first people to know that big saints in the ancient world, people wanted their relics. Because, I don't know if you know the story about St. Maron, but right after St. Maron died, two villages were fighting over his body. They both wanted to keep his relics. And so, what did the solution end up being? Well, the only relic we have of St. Maron today is his head. And so you gotta wonder, where's the rest of his body? It seems like the solution was one side gets the head and the other village gets the rest of his body, right? But this is just a great example of how hard people fought to get the relics of the saints. They wanted them. And certainly people would have wanted the relics of Mary above all else. So why do we not have a single relic of Mary's body? It's because Mary's body is in heaven. There's another theological argument you could make, which is that everybody believes St. Elias was brought into heaven in body and soul. In the ancient world, actually, it's believed that Moses was brought into heaven, body and soul. It was also believed that Enoch was brought into heaven, body and soul. And so it would be kind of strange if these lesser figures were brought into heaven, body and soul, but Mary was not. If we believe in those traditions, we should follow through and believe that Mary also could have been brought to heaven, body and soul. So between the fact that all of the ancient Christians seem to have believed that this was true, the fact that we know where her tomb is but we don't have the relics, and the fact that there is a tradition of other lesser saints going into heaven, body and soul, I think it makes a lot of sense that the Catholic Church has dogmatized this belief that Mary did in fact die and then go to heaven, body and soul. I should clarify, some people don't believe she died first. Some people just think that she went right up. That's why it's sometimes called the Assumption. But what's dogmatized is that she is in fact in heaven, body and soul. And why is that important? Because Mary is a figure of hope. And she's a figure of hope because she's just human. She's just human. From a simple family, from a poor family, most likely. And she achieved the greatest possible honor, not by her own strength, but through the grace of God. There is no non-divine person who has had as important a role in salvation history as Mary has. And there is no non-divine person who has achieved as much sanctity and holiness as Mary had. And that gives us hope. Because Mary was not, by the world's standards, super extraordinary. She didn't have incredible accomplishments or achievements. She didn't found any hospital or build a giant company or do anything really, truly spectacular, even if it's considered good. Mary was a simple person who did God's will. The only thing she did in her life was God's will. And she reminds us that no matter who you are, or your state in life, or your vocation, or what your past is, or what you think your future might be, that you can achieve incredible holiness. Because holiness is achieved through simplicity. Holiness is achieved through doing what God wants us to do. And that's it. That's the only thing you need to do to be holy. And Mary achieves so much holiness that God takes her up into heaven, all of her, body and soul. He's like, skip the whole process. We're not going to let your body decay. I want you with me in heaven right now, just as you are. That's the level of holiness that Mary achieves. How? Through simplicity. Through obedience. Through, to do your will is my delight, Lord. Through, let it be done unto me according to thy will. And if we like her holiness, if we want her holiness for ourselves, that's all we have to do as well. But it's even easier for us because we have her help. And so let us go today to her on the feast of the Dormition, asking for her intercession to achieve the holiness that she herself achieved.